Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hoopers Nation, your top destination for NBA basketball content. For as long as the Eastern Conference has been considered the weakest conference in the NBA, there's a very good chance that this year's East is as tough as it's ever been. Most every team in the East made some upgrades this offseason, whether that was via free agency, the trade market, or the NBA draft. But after the Miami Heat surprised the entire world and became the 2020 Eastern Conference champions, what new teams are on the rise and coming for that crown in 2021? In this video, we'll take a look at the revamped squads in the Eastern Conference, how competitive it'll be, and which teams are most likely to make it to the 2021 playoffs on the East side. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on Hoopers Nation post notifications for more NBA content. Ironically enough, the only two teams who really lost talent are the aforementioned East champs, the Heat and the Toronto Raptors. Jae Crowder left Miami to join CP3 and the new-look Phoenix Suns, while 2020 Slam Dunk Contest winner Derrick Jones Jr. got his bag courtesy of Portland. The Heat only brought in Avery and Maurice Harkless, who are two solid players, yet not as talented and especially as versatile as Crowder and Jones Jr. were. The Heat, however, shouldn't be hurting as much, as we can expect young players like Bam Adebayo and Herro to show some improvement. With one of the brightest coaches in the league in Erik Spoelstra, and with Jimmy Butler still leading the squad, the Heat are still players in the Eastern Conference. Now, looking at the Raptors, it's hard to say where exactly they'll end up being in the East standings next season. They lost two key pieces from their 2019 title run in Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. The duo of Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam will always make sure the team remains competitive enough, but you have to wonder for how much longer the nearly 35-year-old Kyle Lowry can be a top-tier NBA point guard. Toronto exceeded expectations and still managed to secure the number 2 seed in the East this 2020 season, but that isn't likely to be the case again. However, they still project as a playoff team. It's just unlikely they get a top 4 seed this year. Switching gears towards teams who will enter the 2021 campaign heavily improved, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets have to be atop anybody's list. It's scary to think the Bucks were already the number 1 team in the East last year and still managed to get better. This was a must for a front office that was desperately looking for ways to surround Giannis Antetokounmpo with more talent and prevent him from walking away with nothing in next year's free agency. They did so by trading for Jrue Holiday, who was a massive upgrade over Eric Bledsoe and who will now be the primary ball handler in Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo pick-and-roll plays yielded 1.17 points per possession when he was the roll man, and the Bucks shot 59.6% off those pick-and-roll plays. But Milwaukee was unable to run those sets for Giannis consistently. With Holiday in town, expect to see more of that and also expect this team to remain atop the Eastern Conference, at least for the next season. Looking at the Nets, there's something that screams drama about this team. They have one of the most talented rosters in the league, but the combination of names and personalities involved in this equation resembles that of a time bomb waiting to explode. The regular season hasn't even started, yet Kyrie Irving and the Nets have already received $25,000 fines each for violating league media protocols. Irving responded by calling the media peasants and disguises wokeness with arrogance and idiocy. Kevin Durant is a well-known drama queen in his own right, spending a fair share of his time reading his critics' comments on Twitter and even defending himself through burner accounts. Rookie head coach Steve Nash has been tasked with the unenviable duty of managing all of these egos. And with Mike D'Antoni running the team's offense, it's safe to wonder if Nash is just a placeholder with the head coaching title. This roster is talented enough to make it to the NBA Finals plain and simple, but if off-court distractions prove to be more than they can handle, this team will implode sooner than later. These two were arguably the two most improved East teams coming into the season, but two franchises that didn't really get better or worse were the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Celtics obviously lost Gordon Hayward in free agency, but they still managed to be a really dangerous squad in the bubble playoffs without Hayward for most of their run. Also, they made up for Hayward's loss big time by bringing in Tristan Thompson as their new starting center. That was far and away their weakest position, and with a legit inside force like Thompson, the Celtics remain dangerous. Plus, as we mentioned earlier when we discussed Miami, you have to imagine Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown will also take another leap talent-wise. Tatum proved to be one of the most dangerous scorers at the forward position in the playoffs, and it was recently confirmed that he came into this year's training camp standing at 6'10", a 2-inch growth since he was last measured. The Celtics' young core, alongside star point guard Kemba Walker, is ready to take the team to the next level. As for the Sixers, they'll also continue being dangerous. Trading away Al Horford is a perfect example of addition by subtraction. Also, the amount of salary he represented wasn't relative to his true positive impact on the team. They also lost Josh Richardson via trade, but they got Steph Curry and Danny Green back. Curry is one of the best role-player shooters in the league, and even though Danny Green has had a tough time since missing that game-winning 3 in the finals, a new environment and system could help restore his value as a top 3 and D-wing in the NBA. In another underrated move, the Sixers acquired Dwight Howard. He can still give any team valuable minutes as a backup center and is one of the best mentors Joel Embiid could have as a teammate. So even though Philadelphia didn't have an offseason in which they made massive improvements, they did switch their roster up in a smart enough way that gives them potential to grow into next year. Also, don't be surprised if Ben Simmons explodes. He's one really good season away from becoming a consistent MVP candidate for years to come. Assuming the 6 teams we've already covered are locks for the playoffs, even though some might doubt the Raptors as such, that leaves us with 2 playoff spots left and 5 potential teams fighting for them. The other 2 2020 playoff teams in the Indiana Pacers and the Orlando Magic, and 3 other legit contenders in the Washington Wizards, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Detroit Pistons. One of these, the Pistons, are obviously the most unlikely to make the cut. They lost Christian Wood and Luke Kennard in free agency, but you have to consider Blake Griffin possibly having a renaissance season alongside Derrick Rose, who had one himself 2 years ago, and newcomer and rising star Jerami Grant. The Nuggets only provided Grant a fraction of the freedom he now has in Detroit, which is the main reason he moved, and you can consider him an early candidate for 2021 Most Improved Player award. All of this, however, assumes everybody in Detroit plays up to their potential, something that isn't a given or an easy task with how much more competitive the East is. The Pacers and the Magic did nothing to get better this offseason. With Jonathan Isaac already ruled out for the entire 2020-21 season due to a torn ACL, and considering the fact Orlando lost DJ Augustin in free agency, they likely won't be back in the playoffs this season. Add in the fact that the front office has gauged other teams' interest in Aaron Gordon, and it could be a sign they're looking to break this core up. As for the Pacers, the talent and potential is there with all of Domantas Sabonis, TJ Warren, Victor Oladipo, Malcolm Brogdon, and Miles Turner. They're bringing back pretty much the exact same roster as last year, and the true difference maker for this season will be whether Victor Oladipo can return to his previous All-Star form. If he doesn't, they may end up with the 6th seed at best, depending on how the rest of the teams do. But it's important to keep in mind, the East is tough enough this year, and the Pacers' margin of error has been notably reduced. The Hawks are the Eastern team poised for the biggest jump in the standings this upcoming season. They had an A+ free agency with their signings of Danilo Gallinari, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Rajon Rondo, and Chris Dunn. They added Onyeka Okongwu via the draft, a player who will be able to contribute right away. Clint Capella will also be making his debut for the Hawks this year after getting traded to Atlanta mid-season. All of these additions will provide a massive lift to a team that already had a promising young core, with the likes of Cam Reddish, Kevin Huerter, John Collins, and 2020 All-Star starter Trae Young. An offseason like this one would have immediately turned the Hawks into locks for the playoffs in years prior. But given the competitiveness in the East, we can't go that far just yet. We're yet to see how the Hawks' new players mesh together on the court and whether this team's offense is good enough to outweigh their defensive concerns. Finally, the Eastern Conference wildcard is the Washington Wizards. Russell Westbrook's arrival means that this team is almost guaranteed a playoff spot. Russ led a much less talented Thunder squad to the 6th seed in the Western Conference in 2017 en route to his league MVP award. And the Wizards are loaded with shooters and potential all around. Bradley Beal is a household star despite getting snubbed for both the All-Star and All-NBA rosters last year. The Israeli sensation Deni Avdija will make his NBA debut in a Wizards uniform, and he projects as a really good player. Davis Bertans is the league's best volume sharpshooter at the forward position, and Thomas Bryant showed flashes of greatness last season. This team truly has enough to be a problem in the East, but they're a wildcard team because this will all depend on whether Westbrook's arrival elevates this team, as should happen, or if it drowns them. It's a fair question to ask considering Westbrook's track record, especially in the playoffs, but all signs point to Russ being a positive addition. Our prediction has the first 6 teams we discussed, the Heat, the Raptors, the Bucks, the Nets, the Celtics, and the Sixers as playoff locks, with the Hawks and Wizards rounding out the East's top 8. It's been a while since multiple really good teams will be left out of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. For instance, these last 2 seasons, the mediocre Orlando Magic comfortably grabbed hold of the 8th seed due to the lack of competitiveness in the East. But starting this season, this will no longer be the case, as the race for the playoffs in the East will be a really exciting one to follow. Do you agree with our takes on the new Eastern Conference? Which franchise do you think will make it to the 2021 NBA Finals? Make sure to comment your thoughts down below, as well as leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.